Guys, it's Fonzie with DipYourCar.com. Now, Plasti Dip Glossifier has been around for a long time. It's definitely the most commonly used Plasti Dip enhancer. Obviously, it takes the dry, matte look of standard Plasti Dip and changes it to a gloss look. Now, we spend a lot of time troubleshooting and listening to feedback and communicating with our fans and customers. And one of the things I've noticed is there's a big group of you guys out there that get great results using Plasti Dip Glossifier. And then there's a group of you guys out there who, when you use Plasti Dip Glossifier, you're not necessarily getting that gloss look or gloss result that you were looking for. So what I'm going to do today is walk you through a couple of the do's and don'ts of the Plasti Dip Glossifier and how to use it on some wheels, for example. Because what I've noticed is the Glossifier is not necessarily the most user-friendly product. It's not a turnkey product where every time you use it, no matter how you use it, it turns out perfect. There are ways to use it and not end up with a high gloss finish, and there are ways to use it where you get that exact gloss finish you're looking for. So I'll walk you through it. I really hope this helps you guys out. It's Fonzie. Enjoy the video. Alright guys, we're going to work on this wheel for an example. So if you think about what a gloss finish is, another way of thinking about it is the surface ability to reflect light. Now if you have a pane of glass, a smooth pane of glass, it's obviously going to be very reflective and very glossy. If you put a sandy type texture over that pane of glass, the ability of reflecting light, that glossy finish, is going to be dramatically reduced. It's the same exact principle when using Plasti Dip and Glossifier as an enhancer. So if we dip this wheel, so we're going to use anthracite for an example. So we dip this wheel, we get our 4 coats on there. If that finish is perfectly smooth, nice and smooth, and then the Glossifier on top of that is applied nice and smooth, we're going to have essentially a very glossy finish. However, if the Plasti Dip or the Glossifier are applied with texture, maybe too far away, maybe not enough product was put on there, then the end result of this wheel finish is going to be textured, and its ability to look glossy and reflect light is going to be dramatically reduced. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of steps to make sure that not only does your Plasti Dip go on nice and smooth, but the Glossifier goes on smooth and wet as well, so you can have that gloss wheel that you were looking for. So first thing I'm going to do is put my first coat of anthracite on there. And if I'm doing a wheel, whether I'm using anthracite or any other color, the first thing I like to do is put on what we call a tack coat. It's basically a 50% coverage coat, something for the rest of the coats, the heavier coats, to really stick on and get a hold of. Okay, our tack coat is nice and dry. It's also nice and smooth. Obviously, there's not a lot of product that was put on there. So what we're going to do now is go into our second, third, and fourth coats, which are actually going to be much slower and heavier. Now, what you want to do is really pay attention to the corners specifically, because we're going to be moving slow and we're going to be trying to apply a wet coat. When Plasti Dip and especially Glossifier dry as one wet coat, it really avoids that texture and allows it to dry as a smooth surface. So you want to watch your corners, because if you're applying wet coats, you don't want it to build up too much, because you can experience some drips in those areas. So we're going to put our second coat on now. Alright guys, we've got 3 coats of anthracite gray on the wheel right now. We did the exact same application method all the way through. We used a nice slow application. We let the coats build up nice and wet, overlapping all the way around. Really tried to avoid some runs, and what we've got is we've got the first half of that battle won. We've got a perfectly smooth, slick surface. Now it's really just about making sure that the Glossifier goes on there nice and smooth and wet as well. So to give a little bit of a distinction, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape off a section of the wheel right here, and I'm going to continue that down into this area. And what I'm going to do is I'm first going to apply the Glossifier in this small section here, and I'm going to avoid putting on wet coats. I'm going to put it on in a way that may end up in either a textured finish or maybe more of a satin finish. And I'm going to really show you guys this area versus over here when we're going to actually apply it correctly in a nice wet overlapping coat, and we're going to let that dry. And even with one coat of glossifier, you should see a very big difference between the two sides. Now when I do my own personal car, or back when we were doing installations and when we do demos for up front in the retail shop and stuff, we usually only need one good wet coat of glossifier. That's most of the time more than enough to get that glossy finish. So on this side, we're going to do kind of a dry spritzing coat, and on this side, we're going to do it correctly and see what kind of a difference there is. All right guys, we've given it about 15 minutes to dry, and as you can see, obviously this side is much glossier. It's reflecting a ton more light, and it's super smooth. This section of the wheel right here is much drier. I wouldn't say it's matte, it's almost got kind of a satin finish to it, but it's got texture on it. You can see if you look at it from the right angle, there's a lot of pixelation where the glossifier has kind of broken up that smooth surface, and it's having much more difficult time reflecting that light. Now this is not rocket science. As you can see on this side, it was applied heavier, it was applied wetter, and it was able to dry as one smooth, clean surface where it's getting a lot better chance to reflect that light and look very glossy. Again, this is only one coat, and we'll show you some close-ups of it, but this one coat applied right is really all you need to take your wheel from a matte up to a nice high gloss. Guys, now that's how you're going to use Plasti Dip Glossifier to get the best results possible. The 3 or 4 coats of a base, the Plasti Dip itself, has to go on nice and smooth. If you start with texture, you're going to end with texture. And if you have texture, no matter how many coats of glossifier you use, you're not going to end up with a nice high gloss finish. So make sure you use those nice, even, wet coats for your Plasti Dip. Let that Plasti Dip dry nice and smooth, and then you apply the glossifier. Most times, one wet coat of glossifier will be enough. If you want to take it to that next level, you can do the second coat or even a third of glossifier, but make sure that you do it nice and even, make sure all the coats are nice and wet, and obviously you want to avoid any extra product in the corners because you don't want the product to run after you spend so much time getting your wheels perfect. Obviously the Plasti Dip, the glossifier, everything is available for you at DipYourCar.com. This is the same application techniques you're going to use for the other enhancers like the metallizers, for example. You can think of metallizers as basically the glossifier with that metal flake in it. So same principle, make sure that the Plasti Dip goes down smooth, the metallizers, glossifier, whatever you're using goes on top nice and smooth and wet, and you'll get great results. If you have any questions or you need some help, customer service at DipYourCar.com, or you can always call in. If you want beautiful high gloss wheels and this is out of your league and this is not something that you're comfortable with, go on to DipYourCar.com, find your local DipYourCar authorized installer, and they'll be more than happy to do the job for you and do a great job as well. So you can get me on Twitter as always. It's Fonzie. I'll see you on the next video.